Hi, everybody. It is really nice to be with you. My name is Patrick Hyland. I know some of you from previous webinars and sessions. It's really nice to have you back talking about, I think, a really important topic for the turbulent times that we are all facing right now. If you have attended our webinars over the course of 2025, the theme that really has run through from January to now June has been about disruption, volatility, confusion, and the impact that that's having on leaders, on managers, on employees, and on customers. And so, what we're going to talk about today is how we can help our organizations understand internal and external challenges in a quicker, faster way through the process of rapid research so that we can create more adaptive and resilient organizations and learning cultures. So that's the intent for today. As usual, if you have any questions, by all means, please put those in the chat. I think we have maybe about 25 to 30 minutes of content. I'm going to be going through a deck that we just presented in London a month ago at the Engagement Summit, and it was a really fascinating opportunity to start to share and showcase this idea of rapid employee research or rapid organizational research. So I hope you enjoy. If you have questions along the way, please let me know, and also we'll take questions at the end as well. So as we launch in, the summit we attended back in May was really focused on culture. And so with that in mind, as we spoke with the audience, we wanted them to start to think about, in a single word or phrase, how would you describe your organization's culture? I know we're not in a situation here where I can see you and we can have a dialogue, but before I show you what we heard back from over 500 leaders and managers in 500 different organizations, I would love for you each to take up that same challenge. And in a single word or phrase, how would you describe your own organization's culture? I'll give you a second to gather your thoughts. Here's what we heard, and I'll give you more context on the study that I'm referencing as we work our way through today's deck. But what you see emerging are the key themes when we talk to 508 frontline supervisors, mid-level managers, senior leaders, and C-suite leaders. And as you look at the words that pop up, what we heard most frequently were the themes around a collaborative culture, a friendly culture, a toxic culture even, or a supportive culture. These were some of the most popular themes that emerged from that research sample of 508 US and UK supervisors and senior leaders. And as you look at these terms or hear these top four, collaborative, friendly, toxic, and supportive, you can reflect on your own culture and the word that you put down. What we found fascinating in this exercise is that we didn't hear as frequently leaders and managers talking about having an adaptive culture or an innovative culture or a dynamic culture or a learning culture. These words appeared far less often. They were more rare. And we thought that that was really a point of concern given the current context that we are in. We wanted to explore that further and to frame up this issue that we see start to emerge. We went back to some work in the late 90s from Donald Heifetz and Donald Laurie, or Ronald Heifetz and Donald Laurie. Many of you are probably familiar with this, and if not, I'll run through it quickly. But back in the late 90s, they took a look at the business landscape and they looked ahead into the 21st century and they started to make this distinction between technical problems, characterized on the left, and adaptive challenges. Technical problems, as some of you may know, are those kind of problems within organizations and systems that are relatively easy to identify. They're quick to solve. You can call in an expert. And when we are solving for a technical problem, We just need to solve for that problem in one part of the organization. People are usually open to change, and that's because they are eager for a solution. And that solution can be implemented in a quick top-down way. Um, Installing updated software that is going to streamline a process in your organization could be an example of a technical problem. I know that when I was making this presentation in England a month ago, we were having a technical problem at home, and that was part of the dishwasher uh, was out of alignment, and so we knew right away that we needed an expert to come in and fix that. Those types of problems are very different than the adaptive challenges that Heifetz and Laurie said would dominate the 21st century. Adaptive challenges, they said, are really hard to identify. They require a deep change in our values and our attitudes and our mindsets, and they need to be solved by the people that are experiencing the problem. It requires change throughout the whole organization and the system. People are often resistant to adaptive challenges and change because of the way that it makes us rethink our values, our behaviors, our attitudes. And to solve for adaptive challenges, we really need to be experimenting, learning, incorporating multiple perspectives. As I said, they looked ahead into the 21st century and they said most of the big challenges that we would be facing in organizations are going to be less technical in nature and more adaptive. They're both going to exist, and many problems are a combination of both, but they said that it is the adaptive challenges that are really going to dominate. And I think if we look across the course of this year and the feedback we've been gathering, what we're hearing back from leaders, managers, and employees in our monthly webinars and our monthly field studies is that it's these adaptive challenges around how do we cope with the tariffs and the changing political landscape, the emergence of generative AI and the impact that it has on work, the future of work, wars, economic changes, political changes. All of these macro level factors are big adaptive challenges. And one thing that Heifetz and Laurie emphasize is that if you are going to solve for adaptive challenges, those solutions don't reside just in the executive suite or with an external consultant or an internal consultant. What they talk about is that we really need to tap into the collective intelligence of employees at all levels to solve for these complex, hard to identify, hard to diagnose challenges. And so, what that does, I think, is it starts to raise a really important question for all of us if we're in this space of helping our organizations cope with adaptive challenges and helping our workforce cope with adaptive challenges is how do we go about tapping into the collective intelligence of employees at all levels in our organization? Many of you, I assume, would say that our listening programs, our internal employee listening programs, our external client programs, are the ways that we're tapping into the collective intelligence of our workforce. And that's wonderful. If you have these formal internal and external programs, you are probably seeing the multiple benefits of having a well put together employee listening program. Researchers have found that when employees feel listened to, they are empirically more likely to feel engaged and committed. They are more likely to collaborate and be creative, and they are more likely to deliver high levels of service and performance. In fact, there was a recent summary and meta-analysis of the impact of listening in organizations by Kluger and Itchikov. And in 2022, they came to the conclusion in this meta-analysis and summary that cultivating listening in organizations may be one of the most cost-effective ways to improve numerous organizational outcomes. So there really is an evidence-based reason to have robust employee listening programs. What that raises, though, is another question, and that's really what I want to address today. And that is, are the listening programs that we have set up for internal stakeholders and external stakeholders working? That's what I want to explore. As we start to explore this question, I'm going to take us into a rapid research case study. But before I do that, I want to talk about this term, this concept of rapid research. Because as we started to think about how we can help our clients and our partners ensure that their listening programs are working well, we at Remesh looked back to the pandemic. And what we found during the pandemic is that many organizations were using Remesh in very innovative ways for two fundamental reasons, as we surmised. One had to do with COVID-19 and remote work and the need to listen to a scattered workforce in a new way. And the other, at least here in the US and to some extent globally, had to do with George Floyd and all of the emphasis and focus and concern about diversity and equity and inclusion. Beyond Remesh, though, what was fascinating as we looked back to COVID-19 and we looked across different industries, organizations, research fields, is that there were parallels to our small experience at Remesh as it related to utilization of our platform and the ways that other researchers needed to make sense of the COVID-19 emerging pandemic. And that really tells the story of rapid research. And so I want to talk about what rapid research is, provide everyone some grounding there, and then talk about how that can be applied within organizations. So during the pandemic, healthcare researchers needed to understand this emerging crisis and virus quickly. And so what they started to do was use rapid research methods to produce insights that were timely and actionable. Rapid research is a method that has been utilized in various fields over the last couple of decades. It's a relatively new approach to research, but you will find evidence of this in the public health field, in product development, in design user experience, and also in consultancies. And so when we talk about what rapid research is, this is research that is specifically intended to produce timely and pragmatic insights about some phenomenon that is happening in the here and now, that is temporal. And if we don't capture it with some rapid process, we're going to miss it. We're not going to understand it. Now, given its pragmatic focus, rapid research studies are often multi-method. There is a discovery aspect, and to discover what's going on, we really need open-ended questions. And there's also an evaluative or a confirmative aspect, and so that's where closed-ended questions can really help. But it is a mixed method by and large because it's combining discovery of new and emergent dynamics or phenomenon along with some measurement and assessment. There's a collaborative nature and an adaptive nature to rapid research that's also important because the researchers, as they explore this new phenomenon, and in this case, the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic, everything is shifting. And so the researchers need to be nimble and collaborate with various stakeholders to adjust their methods. When we think about rapid research, at Remesh and looked back to the pandemic and how popular the platform was during that time, it really seems to be this need to understand novel, emerging, and complex issues, what Heifetz and Laurie would call adaptive challenges. That seems to be the essence and the core of when we need to be deploying rapid research techniques. And so as we experience 2025, we are having and seeing from our clients and our partners and our prospects this similar desire to understand a very tumultuous internal and external business environment and to do research in new and nimble and exploratory ways. And so, as we started to really think more about our experience and what we learned from the public health field and the research they did, and this concept of rapid research, we really felt this need to ground it and to define it as it relates to employee research. And so, when we talk about rapid research, rapid employee research at Remesh, what we're talking about is an approach to research that complements traditional employee research methods. If you're doing pulse surveys and annual engagement surveys, onboarding surveys, exit surveys, all those traditional surveys, those are very important. And we're certain that those standing traditional surveys are serving some very important purposes, helping you establish or helping you measure established constructs like engagement, job commitment. They're usually closed-ended in nature. You may have a couple of open ends at the end, but they're usually closed-ended. We're evaluating employee attitudes and experiences. We're asking employees to think back and on a Likert scale to indicate the extent to which they're agreeing with various statements that we've found quantitatively and empirically to be valuable. Usually there's an analyst that's taking a careful look at the data and doing a variety of statistical analyses. And I used to do quite a bit of engagement survey research. That was really where I spent 20 years out of my 25-year career now. And these can take quite a while. Your vendor, your research partner may do it in a more consolidated fashion, but usually traditional employee research studies, there is a setup time, there is an administration time, there is an analysis time, and then there is a releasing of report time. And all of that can be very important. But that's not necessarily going to help us explore and understand some of these emerging stressors that we are seeing and hearing from leaders, managers, and employees. And that's really where rapid employee research comes in. What we're talking about here is research that is much nimbler. It is focused on exploring emerging issues with open and closed-ended questions so that we're getting both the discovery and the evaluation. We're seeking to tap into employees' tacit knowledge of what's going on internally and externally. It is less about evaluating the extent to someone feels engaged in an organization or committed or supported by their leaders, although you could ask all of those in a rapid employee research study. And they are much more about what are you seeing and hearing and feeling and observing, and what should we be changing together? A huge part of what makes rapid employee research work, or at least at Remesh, is the ability to analyze qualitative data, quantitative data, both as an analyst and with the power of generative AI. And if you are a Remesh user, you know how powerful Summarize and AutoCode can be. And if not, we'll show some of that. But you really should take a look at that because it really does speed up that process where we are no longer overwhelmed by all of that rich qualitative data, which often generates the most insight and is often most valued by leaders, managers, and employees. As we do rapid research, we would argue that what we're trying to do is to identify and address adaptive challenges, not the technical challenges that still beleaguer organizations, but can be solved through correlational analysis and regression analysis and key driver analysis. But really understand those adaptive emerging challenges that exist within the organization. And we do this in short order. We're talking about doing this within hours. We're talking about doing this within days, possibly weeks, but not months. And so that is what we are doing as we work with clients to manage the turbulence of the here and now, is helping them really complement their traditional employee research techniques and processes with a rapid employee research process. We think this really fits the zeitgeist, the challenge of the day, because it really allows researchers, leaders, supervisors, and employees to explore what's causing uncertainty and ambiguity, and to explore and invent and experiment and adapt with new ways of understanding some of these challenges that we are facing. And this quote from Edward Hess in his book, Learn or Die, really emphasizes the importance of, in these ambiguous, turbulent times, the best way for organizations to manage that turbulence is to be in this exploratory, experimenting, and adaptive space. And what we're finding and hearing is that rapid research really allows for that. Now, if you're going to do rapid research, we really need to be working in a method and in a platform that allows us to gather data very quickly. And if you are a Remesh user, hopefully your experience is that you can gather data at a pace that is much different than what you typically do with traditional closed-ended surveys. If you haven't, what the Remesh platform allows you to do is gather 1,000 employees all at once, or up to 5,000 employees in somewhat of a survey setting into an online dialogue, where you as the researcher or the insights gatherer can ask in a really dialogical way, open and closed-ended questions. There is this ability to reach employees across the globe in multiple languages. And then what I have found as a researcher is it's those back-end analytics, it's the AI-powered analysis that I can use as a researcher to help me make sense of that data more quickly than I ever could before. I don't personally allow the AI capabilities to do the research for me, but I really emphasize and focus on and have felt empowered by doing the research in conjunction with the AI in a partnership method. And it for me ends up producing pragmatic insights quickly, and I'm happy to talk more about that. Um, but this is what we're trying to articulate. This is what we're seeing from our clients' current state as a critical need. And this is what we're trying to articulate more broadly to organizations, because we see it as an important research capability that is underdeveloped or not fully understood or realized in many organizations. I personally am getting quite passionate about evangelizing this whole idea of how do you complement your robust people analytical capabilities and your important traditional survey research programs with this ability to do rapid research, to be curious about emerging phenomenon that really needs to be understood in the here and now. I think part of that desire to really convince more organizations to do more rapid research stems from what we're seeing and hearing as we conduct our studies month by month with employees, leaders, and managers. This desire and hunger for more insights more quickly just continues to come through. And I want to show you some data from our most recent field study that really speaks to, I think, this need for organizations to be generating insights more quickly for decision makers. So I'm going to walk you through a quick case study, and then we'll pull it all together. If you're interested in setting up a rapid research program, I'll give you some tips, and then happy to take any questions at the end. But what I want to talk about is a study that we conducted on April 30th, 2025. We went out to 508 supervisors to C-suite leaders in 508 different organizations through the Remesh platform, and using Remesh Recruit, which allows us to gather data quickly from a cross-section of organizations. You don't need to use Remesh Recruit if you're doing this internally, reaching out to your own employees, leaders, managers, supervisors. But we went out and we asked them a total of 16 questions. About half were closed-ended and about half were open-ended. And I'll show you some of those results. And this took less than 20 minutes for these participants to complete. And it took us less than 20 hours to gather data from these 508 leaders. And it just took a couple of hours, probably 2 to 3, to pull together the key insights. So we were able to do this all within the course of a calendar day. And if we had all 508 leaders, managers, and employees together at the same time, this could have been done within the course of really half a day, 4 or 5 hours. The data came together really fast, is really, I think, the main point. So I've talked about a bit of this on the previous slide, but if you have not participated in a remesh session, and we have a link in the back, which will take you into this study, and you can see what it's like to be a participant. One of the unique things about the remesh platform is it allows you as a participant to respond to open-ended questions through a chat feature. After you have submitted your response to a question, you then start to see responses from colleagues, from other people in the same dialogue, the same conversation. And you are asked as a participant to upvote those other comments that you agree with, or to downvote those comments that you disagree with. And so for me as a researcher, and for any of you that are using the platform, there's great value in starting to see which of these qualitative, open-ended questions resonates with the research community that we are trying to understand. And we can do other things with that open-ended data, quite a bit of content coding through Gen AI. But it's that upvote, downvote that provides an additional level of insight to really understand from the research community that we're seeking to understand what resonates with them. So with that in mind, let me show you some of the findings from this study, because I think it really starts to shed insight on what leaders, managers, and employees in this sample are experiencing just a month ago on April 30th, and what your own leaders and managers and supervisors may be dealing with now. So one of the questions that we asked was, what are the biggest challenges you are facing as a leader? And so when we took all of those open-ended comments that we received back from the 508 leaders, and we auto-coded that within Remesh, which is generative AI, large language model, content coding, here were the most common themes that emerged. Maintaining team morale was the top concern from these 508 leaders, followed by recruiting and retaining top talent, navigating this economic uncertainty, and handling workload pressures. These were the most dominant themes. Now, these may not surprise you. You may look at this and scratch your head and say, well, I'm really not learning anything new. But really, the value in exercise like this is talking to your own workforce and understanding internally what it is your leaders and managers, your supervisors, your employees, your customers are concerned about in the here and now. We wanted to answer that question that I posed 10 slides ago. And that question, the high-level research question, is how effective is our employee listening strategy? I think that's a critical question. If you are in a employee engagement, employee listening lead role, I think it's a really important question to ask yourself and really to ask your stakeholders right now. When we asked these 508 leaders a series of questions about their organization and the extent to which their organizations were listening effectively, we saw some interesting results. The first question on the far left: in recent months, have you, as a leader, manager, or supervisor, had the information you've needed to make effective leadership decisions? Depending on how you look at it, the good news is that 72% agreed. But I do think the concern is that 1 out of 4, actually 28%, disagreed. They didn't feel they had the information they needed to make the decisions they need to right now. When you look at that middle question, to what extent has your organization been doing a good job of listening to employees in recent months? We see a bit of a drop off. Here we're seeing 37% are not agreeing with that statement. And I think most importantly, when we ask this question, is your organization doing an effective job making rapid sense out of the new emerging trends and issues that you're facing? Is your organization doing a good job? That's where we see the lowest level of agreement. Only 6 out of 10 leaders, managers, and supervisors are saying yes. And so as we look at this, we really start to see this need as leaders, managers, and supervisors navigate all of this ambiguity for organizations to especially get better at helping their leaders, managers, and supervisors make rapid sense out of these changing dynamics. And this, to us, really starts to create that call for action to create rapid research programs in our organizations. Another one of the questions is, what types of rapid insights would benefit your organization the most right now? And when we looked at all those open-ended responses and we categorized them using the platform, at the very top of the list, we really need to understand employee engagement and morale, followed by our customers, their feedback, their satisfaction levels, market trends, customer behaviors, employee well-being, needing real-time KPIs and feedback. These are really the critical needs. And again, you may look at these and you may not be having a huge aha moment. These are summaries of statements. If you can imagine doing the same exercise in your own organization, you're going to both start to see the main themes that are important, as well as the detailed findings and the raw comments themselves. But this seems to be in this here and now churn, internally and externally, what leaders and managers and supervisors are looking for. To get a bit deeper understanding of what these leaders, managers, and supervisors are talking about, we're showing you some of the comments that came back in response to that last question. And I think this starts to add a little bit of depth to those important summary findings. Over on the left, we heard from one US-based frontline supervisor. Lately, the information I've needed the most has been honest, up-to-date insights on how my team is really doing, how they're performing, how they're coping with workload, how their morale is. This frontline supervisor is saying it's really tough to make the right calls without a clear picture of where everyone stands and what they actually need now in April. And so if you think about this frontline supervisor, let's say they had conducted an engagement survey last December or even January, beginning of this year. Their workforce is potentially in a very different place from December or January to now. And so this supervisor seems to be looking for real-time feedback on where his or her employees are right now. Over on the right, similar comment from a UK-based middle manager, insights about my team in terms of morale, challenges, and needs. Those are really going to be important. One of the themes that will come through in a couple of slides is that the reason leaders, managers, and supervisors are looking for this feedback in the here and now is they want to identify efficiencies, ways to reduce stress, reduce workload, and come up with here and now solutions to these new and emerging issues. We asked this sample this question. To paraphrase, you can see the actual question in the research report, which is available at the end of the deck, or the actual study. But we asked them, given everything that your organization is coping with right now, to what extent do you think it is a strategic imperative for your organization to develop a listening program that generates rapid research? And what you can see here in the data is that if you take those first two responses, 8 out of 10 leaders, managers, and supervisors in our research sample said that creating a rapid research listening program is at least a moderate strategic priority. 37%, in fact, are saying it should be considered a top priority. Only 19% are saying, given everything that we're dealing with right now, this is not where I would invest our time and energy. Last couple of slides as we start to wrap up this case study, and then we can talk about if you are intrigued by this idea of rapid employee research, how you could go about doing it, or even you may already be doing rapid employee research, and we would love to hear how you're doing that. This final question from the case study, I've showed you five questions out of the 16 total. But if you were in charge of designing an organizational listening program that generates rapid insights for decision makers, what would you focus on? And we again see over on the left the main themes that emerged, really understanding employee feedback, followed by customer feedback, Those are the two critical stakeholders that leaders, managers, and supervisors want to hear from. But they want these real-time feedback loops that allow for continuous improvement. That you can see is the second most popular theme that emerged. What also is very interesting over on the left is that we're seeing that leaders, managers, and supervisors are very open to and eager to bring AI into the data analytical process. In fact, you see over on the right a sample comment from a US-based frontline manager. In response to this question, this manager says, look, we want something, or I want something that is fast, practical, and leads to change. And these words really echo the core aspects of rapid research across industries and how we're talking about rapid research at Remesh. Keeping things simple and accessible, allowing employees and customers to share feedback, quick surveys, and open discussions. And this manager is saying using AI-driven analytics to help process the data and identify key trends before issues arise. This, for this frontline manager, seems to be the aspirational goal of what a rapid employee or organizational research program and process would look like. And it very much, I think, exemplifies some of the themes that we're seeing over on the left. So if you are thinking about how to set up and launch a rapid employee research program or a rapid customer research program or a rapid organizational research program, I would say a couple of things. The first is really realize that the best employee research programs, the best employee rapid research programs, are complementing your established practices. This is not a way to replace your annual engagement survey or even your pulse check-ins. This is a way to complement what you're doing from a people analytics perspective, from a traditional survey research perspective. And the best programs we're seeing have an interaction across these different levels of data collection, diagnosis, listening, and intervention. If you are working in the people analytics space, there are a number of things that you are likely finding empirically and statistically that you need to understand the why behind whatever correlation, regression, key driver analysis, SEM. There is a discovery aspect where you need to go out and listen and understand. That's a great example of where rapid research can come into play. And same with any traditional survey. What we find is that it's in the actioning process where many traditional employee survey programs fall down. It's a well-known Achilles heel in many programs. And again, that's where rapid research based on dialogue, based on open-ended comments, based on discovery can really help a program. So it's really this interaction and this complement between these three critical aspects of employee listening. That's where we see the best programs coming together. They have this capability to do all three. That may seem a little abstract. So to give you something a bit more concrete, we do have a six-step model, and we're happy to talk about that more. But I think the most critical step in this whole model is to talk to leaders and managers and supervisors and employees, talk to customer-facing workers, talk to your customers themselves, and really figure out that first bubble at the very top. What are your most acute concerns? What are the critical needs, the information gaps that exist right now that if you could fill, it would really help you make better decisions? I think that is the best place to start any rapid research process. And many of the questions that we've surfaced in today's case study can be used for that purpose. We will show you all the questions that existed in this case study that I featured. And any of those you can use in your own organizations to start to see. You may find that there is not an information gap, that your listening program is robust and nimble and meeting the needs of your workforce in these tumultuous times. But in that process of identifying your acute concerns and your acute informational needs, essentially you're going to be able to unearth any blind spots or information gaps that may exist. We've been conducting a variety of rapid research studies over the past at least 6 months, and many of you have participated in our monthly webinars and seen or heard some of these studies. Here are just some examples. But what we really are finding is that it's this ability to be curious about here and now events and phenomenon that really is informing leaders, managers, supervisors, and employees about how to cope with all the volatility. And that really is where we see rapid research becoming an increasingly important capability, underdeveloped in many organizations, to navigate through these adaptive challenges. I know we have about 5 minutes left, and you may have questions. And if so, please, you can put those in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer those. Also, we're happy to chat following today's webinar. We will send out today's deck as we normally do. What you'll find at the back of the deck is access to a report that reviews the case study that I just showed you pieces and parts of, as well as the actual conversation. You can actually go in and you can take the conversation, it's open and live right now, and see what that experience is like. And if there are any questions that are really compelling, use those with your own workforce to see where they are. If you had to start with any of them, I would really focus on some of those evaluative questions about, do you have the information you need right now? Are you doing a good job listening to your employees? Are you doing a good job making rapid sense out of emerging issues? Those are 4 good closed-ended questions to ask, followed by, what is the most important rapid research insight or information that would benefit you the most right now? 4 questions can be answered really quickly and hopefully generate some good insights for you. So with that, I will take a pause. We have a couple of minutes left. We'll see if any questions come in. If they do, wonderful. If you need to run, hope you enjoyed today's discussion. Let us know what you think. Let us know if you have any questions. And we look forward to our next webinar coming up later this summer. At this point, I'll pause and see if anyone has any questions. Going once, going twice. It was really wonderful to spend this 45-minute period with you. Hope you all have a great rest of the day, and look forward to seeing you again on future webinars. Thanks.